everyone. Alrighty. If you'd like to use captions, please click closed captioning in the bottom. They are, as far as I can tell, pretty accurate. So let us know if you have any questions about using those. My name is Tessa Bryant, she, her. I'm a white woman with short, curly red hair, and I'm currently wearing a pink, black, and white striped shirt with a black cardigan, and I'm got black glasses, blank white background. I'm the producer of the Convergence series, and I'm really excited to share this evening with you. Welcome to the first Convergence event of the season. I'm really excited about the work we're doing, and I'm so happy that you're all here. I'm going to begin this evening with a few notes and announcements. First, I want to note that I'm streaming from the territory traditionally shared by the Cherokee, Shawnee, and Yuchi tribes in present-day Nashville, Tennessee, which is where Verge does its work as well, and also where Sean is streaming from. The territory was used cooperatively among those three tribes according to their own agreements and natural seasonal changes until the Tennessee state government began seizing the land by way of predatory treaties in 1768. I invite attendees to learn about the ways that the Cherokee, Shawnee, and Yuchi peoples are continuing to steward the land in the Nashville area. Secondly, I want to let you know that we will be recording this evening's discussion for educational use. We will not be recording the breakout rooms in interest of allowing everyone to feel comfortable and open asking questions. If you have any questions about that, just let us know in the chat. And then next, I want to give you 3 important links. I will drop them in the chat after my announcements. There are links to join our mailing list, to donate to Verge, and a link to our comment box. If you would like to receive occasional, very occasional email updates about what Verge has going on, please sign up. If you have a comment or question about this series, please visit our comment box. And finally, we make this series free because we believe in both cooperation and education. We also believe in paying our artists for their expertise, work, and time. So if you would like to donate to Verge to help us pay our artists, we would really appreciate that. Every penny helps. This is a weird time, but we would appreciate your contribution if you're able right now. And with that, I would love to turn it over to Sean Witzel, who is our lead facilitator for the evening. I'm really excited about our panelists and what they have to say. Later, after a discussion with our panelists, we'll be doing breakout rooms to let everyone sort of discuss and troubleshoot and problem solve with one another. And I'm excited to hear what all of you have to say as well. So without further ado, Sean.
Hello, everyone. I am Sean Witzel. I am wearing a gold cap with a black and gold jacket. I am a black man with a beaded necklace. I have glasses and I'm incredibly handsome. I am in front of a mostly black background. There are some cool pictures and certificates and artwork behind me. So I am happy to be here and happy to be a part of this, what I believe is going to be a very fruitful discussion tonight. But I'm not here by myself, right? I have some cool panelists who are going to come out here and introduce themselves to you. So I am going to invite Amanda and Kyle to come on out. There they are.
Hello.
Hello, hello. You all want to introduce yourselves?
Go for it, Amanda.
Sure. My name is Amanda Card. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white woman with wavy blonde hair that is piled on top of my head. I'm wearing a gray turtleneck under a black dress. I have gold rimmed glasses on. I'm in front of a white wall with only a couple of sad things hanging on it. And I am streaming in from the territory which rightfully belongs to the Lenape people in present day Bronxville, New York.
What's good, everybody? I'm Kyle Hayden, he, him, his. I am streaming in from the traditional lands of the Osage and the Shawnee people, known at present day as Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I am a black man with a full beard. I'm wearing a black beanie and a green quilted hoodie. And I'm in a room with one blue wall and one white wall behind me. Happy to be here tonight.
Awesome, awesome. I forgot to share my pronouns, which are he, him, his. All right, let's dive into this discussion, shall we? All right, let's do it. Let's do it. All right, so new works as a path forward. This really excites me because I'm a playwright myself and I'm always creating new works. So I'm excited and looking forward to hearing what you all have to say about this particular subject matter. So tell me, what has been your experience producing new works, and what have you gained by that experience? Kyle, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, sure, sure. So I just recently stepped down as the artistic director of the Ashland New Plays Festival, which I ran for 6 seasons. I'm still an associate artist there, so I'm still affiliated with the company. So our what we tried to do at AMPF is to be an oasis for playwrights. So we have a community-based competition where we solicit scripts from all over the world, and we have community members come together, read the scripts, argue about them, and whittle it down to we pick 4 winners. And so we call it the Fall Festival. It happens every October, and it's a real great moment for the community to kind of come together and celebrate theater. People in Ashland follow theater like people in the South follow college football. It's not like fanatical about it. So it's a really cool environment for that. And then, during the course of the year, we would find other playwrights to support and kind of bring in their work and raise it up. So so that's been my primary focus the last 6 years. I've also, worked in developing some new work as an actor and a director in other places, but I've been working kind of primarily under that institutional umbrella, and then, occasionally partnering with playwrights who I, maybe working on a project with. So that's kind of my umbrella. So what was the second part of it about the challenges, or
Like what you've gained from that?
Oh, I think that uh, there's something really great about creating something new, creating a new story. I am a storyteller. I come from a tradition of storytellers. Um, and, it's the same thing that you would do when you were a kid, like running around the backyard, making up stuff with your friends, talking about you're going to go on this adventure. You're going to, take these crackers and make them your rations and hide out in a tent or whatever. It's the same thing. You just can do it in a kind of a bigger, better, bolder, more realized way. So it's this really elemental part of the human experience that I think, at least for me as a Black man, like that tradition of storytelling is in my blood, right? It's what our people do. So there is this great connection, I think, to the past, and as well as knowing that, like, all of the stories that we hold dear in theater, right? If you think about, the August Wilson cycle or Tennessee Williams plays, they all like started as a new play at some point. So to think about the legacy of what you're creating and how that might spin forward in the future, it makes me a little dizzy to kind of think of like the whole continuum in that sense. But it just connects me, I think, to the past, present, and future in a way that I find really rewarding and fulfilling.
Nice, nice. Amanda, you want to chime in on that?
I just wanted to say I'm so excited to be among such excellent company. Like I'm just really like it's so awesome to be in a virtual room with you. That resonates so much with me. When I started working on new works and producing new works and writing my own new works, it felt like that feeling I had when I was a kid, like you were talking about, like being in the backyard and running around, and that there was something about my time as an actor that just didn't connect me to that place as much as I feel it when I'm making something new with other people. I'm addicted to that feeling.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, for me, being someone who is an actor and a director as well, I feel mostly connected to writing. And that's because that's just something that was like my first love as a kid. And I produce a lot of my own plays and stuff, and so I'm always writing new stuff. And I think one of the things that I've gained is kind of goes back to what you were saying, Kyle, about an August Wilson play was once a new works, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me think of like Nina Simone's quote that is an artist's responsibility to reflect the times. And when we're writing in our current times and we're being inspired by what's going on around us, we are documenting time, and so those who come behind us who will read or experience our works will be able to kind of see what it is we were doing and what we were living through. And I think that's important for just like that storytelling that is passed on, like there's an African tradition, which I think is really near and dear to me. Let's go to the next question. Okay, so what are some reasons that you often hear for not producing new works? And like with my company, I'm constantly producing new works, but I know that there are other companies that don't, and I've heard reasons for that. But I'm interested in knowing like what some of the things that you've heard, or they don't produce them at all, or they don't produce a lot. But what are some of the reasons you've heard for that being the case?
I'm just going to jump in. I've heard people say, well, people aren't going to come to it if they don't know what it is. If there isn't that name, people think that if there isn't that name recognition, if you're a producer and you're worried about losing money, you think if people don't already know what it is, then they're not going to spend their money on it, which I think is underestimating your audience for sure. And I also think there's a thing where like, with those kind of like time tested things like Tennessee Williams and Arthur Miller and that kind of stuff, I think producers sometimes are like, well, we know that this is good. Like history has proven to us that this is good. So this isn't as much of a risk because we know that this is good. And I think sometimes new works feel a little bit riskier because you're like, what is good? Who knows what good is? But I think it feels like more of a risk when it's not something that you already know. It's like going to a restaurant and ordering the thing on the menu that you don't know what's in it, I guess, for some producers.
I think that's exactly it. That restaurant analogy is such a powerful one. When you go to a restaurant, are you the type of person that wants to try new things? Are you looking for new flavors? Are you looking for new experiences? Or do you just want the same comfort foods, And I think that there are a lot of places that program that think that their audiences only want comfort foods, and they're not really, they're risk averse, they're not interested in really kind of challenging them. And I get that. We have this scarcity mentality that it feels like we don't have any money and we have to hold on to the supporters that we have. And, you can be real conservative in that sense, and not, kind of deign to push the boundaries. I think that there's also something to, I was going to say it feels this way outside of New York, but I think New York feels this way too. That there's this perception sometimes that because it's new, it's a lack of quality, that, it's, and again, it goes back to economics, right? That it's like cheaper to do. It's like, well, it must not be good because like they're writing it and like who writes plays and who is this person? I never heard of this person, So I think sometimes that's an obstacle when people would come and see plays in Ashland who hadn't seen them before, and they'd be like, oh, these are really good, and they're kind of surprised, which kind of threw me a little bit. But it's, again, like everything's got to start from somewhere, so I think that's part of it. Change is hard, right? Like I think that's the big thing. And so it's like, how do you coax people or get people to change and try something new, do something different?
Yeah, that leads into my follow-up question, because I think about, like, I've been on boards for theater companies, so I've had this conversation before. I've heard the whole, well, we know this will sell some musical that they know everybody's going to come to. So I get it from like a safety concern, I guess, and money, budget, whatever. But how do we go about bringing about change? Like, how do we convince those who are making the decisions to be more open to presenting new works and what the possibilities could be if they did that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Again, I was really fortunate to be with an organization that did new plays. So the people on the board were part of that mission. Yeah, I think it's I think it's a buy-in, right? I think it's about convincing people what your mission is and what you're trying to do, by telling that story. I think if you can tie it into what your theater's doing, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you're a Shakespeare theater or you're committed to like classic works, I don't know how you figure that part out, but it feels like if you're someone that's not tied to a specific genre in that sense or specific era, that you can find stories that, accompany the mission, right? And I think looking for those things that compel people, you know, it's got to be part of the ticket at least there.
Yeah. And I think that like being and I mean, I'm sure not everyone sees it this way, but I think part of running a theater company in a community means that you are in a community,
Mhm.
and you should endeavor to be an active participant in that community.
Mhm.
And I think longevity in terms of having a theater company that will last means being keyed into what that community cares about. And that includes that community's stories and stories that come from that community and stories that reflect what that community looks like. So I think it's actually a really smart business decision as an artistic director of a theater company to invest in the community that you are in, to ask them to tell their stories, give them platforms to tell their stories, and ask them what they want to see. But I understand that um, that's not the norm everywhere. When we think theater, I think in a lot of communities we think Mamma Mia. There's nothing wrong with Mamma Mia, but I think uh, helping communities understand that theater is storytelling,
Mhm.
and that you don't have to be Arthur Miller to be a storyteller. You don't have, everyone can be a storyteller. So opening doors for more people in the community to like try it,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. This is like my soapbox. I really feel that the future of theater is about being local, about being tied to your community,
Yes.
being engaged with your community, not outreach, but engagement, right? And you know, it's really great that like I can sit here 10 hours away from Nashville, and like have these conversations, or Amanda and I are 7 hours apart. We could talk like this, and I think that that's going to stay, right? But I think what's going to make theater vital when we continue is like being able to engage with the people that you're on the ground with, And so I'm hoping that we become less oriented on what's coming out of New York. There are always going to be great things coming out of New York, but more about like, okay, what does my community need? What is my community interested in? What are the stories that I can bring to my community from other places? But what are the stories that I can, invest in inside my community and showcase, highlight, and maybe take to other places? So I think like that, tuning into that's going to be the key. And it's going to be real interesting to see what happens in 6 months or 12 months to see who is able to do that, who's able to roll up their sleeves and, get on the ground and engage with people and find out what they want, and who is going to just program the way that they were programming 5 years ago. And I'm going to bet that a lot of those people are not going to be around very long,
Yeah.
because we're, society is moving, technology is moving, and more and more artistic directors that I talk to in kind of my casual conversations or friends that I'm touching base with or whatever are all talking about this. Like, I need to be in my community. I need to see what people are doing. I need to see what people are care about. My stories on stage need to reflect them. And it just makes all the sense in the world. It's one of those things that feels really obvious. And yet I feel like the regional theater model has not really been based on that at all. It's been very much based on bringing things from New York. And so I'm curious to see how that and how musicals will continue to develop in that way as well, kind of being tied into local folks.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about like how like with the stuff that I do, think about like my audience. Interesting. My audience is shocked when I haven't written something. so, so it's just interesting to hear like the reasons for not doing it, because I think you have to like Amanda said, like you're underestimating your audience.
Yeah.
When you don't allow them to show you that they can appreciate new work and support new work the way they've supported everything else. So yeah, so I know that it's possible, but I don't know. I guess it's just something that we have to keep pushing for so that, to help prove that that companies can do that. What are some of the obstacles with that though, with producing new works, whether it's the writing or devising or producing? What are some of the challenges that come with that? Because we can talk about how great it is, right? To be able to put these new stories out and to share them with the public. But what are some of the obstacles that may come with that? You end up with you have to do the work to sell this show, right? Because it's not something that an audience is familiar with. So you got to step your game up as a producer, as a marketing person, or whatever, to make sure that people are interested in coming to see the show. I would say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. For me, the thing that I think about is our system of producing plays isn't set up for kind of the for a leisurely development process. Like the plays like can't I was a company member of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, right? And so we would pick our plays in March the year before, and so there would be it was done or maybe it wasn't, but there was no wiggle room, right? You had 10 months or 14 months or 16 months, and that play needed to be up, and it didn't matter if it was done or not. There was too much money riding on that. So how do you develop something, right, that needs time, that maybe needs some workshops or iterations, when we're just not financially set up for that. Our system isn't really set up for that. How can you get it to audiences that will care and help you make something, as opposed to coming in and being like, that's terrible, these jokes, I hate this. So I think a lot about, if I could wave a magic wand, how could I create a kind of incubator for playwrights that would allow them to create a piece at the pace in which it needed to be developed, and to premiere when it was ready to premiere, instead of having to go on an artificial timeline based on the needs of the economics. And the producer in me is like, haha, that's really funny, but that's really what I want. I feel like that would be the best thing, is to like let it steep as long as it needs to steep.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say something really similar. I was thinking in terms of like devising. One of the biggest challenges for me when it comes to like devising a piece with a group is turning off that part of my brain that came up in regional theater, where it's like, all right, we've got 2 weeks of rehearsal, let's go. And so your brain is like, we're just going to go with the easiest solution, the fastest solution. We're just going to come up with an answer right away. And in devising, to make it like a truly democratic process takes so much time. And it's so like against every instinct that was put in me doing regional theater, to sit in a room with a group of people and like not know, and be like, this doesn't make sense, and be like, let's try something. All right, that was a disaster, let's not try to like fix it right away. So yeah, I think the challenges for devising, and also I think for creating new work, there are similar instincts in the writing of it, like in the creation of it. Sometimes I feel in my writing like I need to make this as palatable as possible, or as producible as possible, or there's a traditional structure that I need to like follow. And I feel that cutting off all these creative like instincts in my brain, because there is no one way to write a play or one way to tell a story. So I think having time to create a democratic process, and also letting yourself be truly creative without trying to worry too much about if it's going to fit in this like mold.
The best moments, I feel like, are when I'm in a room creating with people and we allow ourselves, like Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade, when he like steps off, like on the path, and the path is there, just allowing yourself that freedom. I feel like those moments are the best, the most fun. You fall on your face sometimes, but having the freedom, the ability, the courage to do that, like I'll use the word courage there. I feel like it's right,
Yeah.
is super exciting. And to be able, it would be so great to do that in the luxury of like, we have the time to iterate until we get that right, as opposed to like, we're going to take this big leap and like, I hope it works. And if it doesn't, we're screwed, So, but yeah, I totally resonate with what you're saying there, Amanda. I'm right with you on that.
Yeah. You guys make a lot of great key points with, especially when I'm thinking about like the need to be able to, for a piece to be able to have the time that it needs to get to where it needs to go. Yeah, it gives it, to me, it's like giving it a fair chance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what from your perspective do new works have to offer artists and audiences, particularly those that are traditionally underrepresented groups? I have a lot to say about this one.
Go. Start us off.
Yeah.
Don't hold back, brother. Come on.
Please.
All right, let me take my jacket off. So, like I think about why, one of the reasons why like I started producing plays is because I remember going to auditions, and like when you're a Black actor, you have to think about like, all right, will they cast me in this role? Like that's like something, because if the role isn't written for a Black man, you have to wonder if they'll be willing to, quote, take a chance on you, which sounds really whack to me, but that's just the reality of it in some situations. And so, like I started writing because there were stories, I wanted to see people, I wanted to work more. I wanted to see people who looked like me work more. There were certain stories that I felt like weren't being told. There were stories that I felt like that were near and dear to me. And, I wanted to go to theater and see, I wanted to see people of color. I wanted to see Black folks. I wanted to see diversity on the stage. And so like for me, writing, it gave my writing that much more purpose and meaning to me. And so like, I feel like writing and creating new works gives me an opportunity to help create that world where there is more equity, there is more opportunity, there's more diversity, because I can say I'm going to build this world where these characters exist, and I can take it upon myself to cast it and to make sure that, and to direct it or find someone to do those things, and to make sure that this piece sees the light of day, so that someone coming behind me doesn't have to have the same experience that I had, And to me, that's super important to have that representation for like the little boy who is watching theater, who sees somebody that looks like him, or the little girl that sees someone that looks like her, and they know that they can too be on that stage one day. So yeah.
Not seeing your story reflected in the media you consume, I think for me was really psychologically damaging. And being someone who grew up like just in love with theater, and as I got older, realizing that I didn't see women who looked like me. I didn't see stories about women who looked like me on stage. And so I guess in my brain, I thought, well, then I have to make myself like the kinds of women that I see. I have to make myself like the kind of woman who can be cast as Ophelia, or the kind of woman who can be cast as the ingenue in a Tennessee Williams play. And this wreaked havoc on my mind and my body and on my creativity, because I turned off all of my own instincts and tried to make them closer to the media I was consuming. And gosh, it makes me so sad to think about it. And I don't want that to happen to other people. Just like you were saying, Sean, like if I can like tell a story if I can tell my story and someone like me sees it and that makes them want to tell their story, I mean, what's better than that?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, I think we, especially in the last 6 or 7 months, we've been kind of really reckoning with kind of the price of white supremacy, like what it's done to us as a society. And, I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit more too, but like the urge to like throw everything out, you know. And I think what I really love about new works is that we can make something new and kind of psychologically release ourselves from maybe some of the burdens, right? Or at least be more aware of what we're creating, and not have to kind of interpret or rethink, but like we can tell the story that we want to tell while taking into account, the kaleidoscope of people that exist in the community that we're creating the art, and we don't have to kind of shove the square peg into the round hole, and I think we're just kind of coming to terms with being okay with that. I went to a great grad program. I went to Columbia for my grad acting degree, and I spent 3 years like working on classical theater, and I came out, and the first few auditions I had were all for Black characters. Never worked on any of them in school, and just kind of understanding like creating things for people, right, for who you are now, for kind of putting yourself in that, I think is. And the thing that like really I always think about too, is that we actually film and TV do this all the time, right? It's okay for us to do it on camera, but it's not okay for us to do it live in some way, shape, or form. So I think I'm really excited about, hey, let's have that contemporary material that speaks to us in a very immediate way, in a very immediate place, like right in front of you, rather than doing it on your couch, So.
Cool. All right. Let's talk about some of the classics, right? I have some thoughts like, okay, Kyle is ready.
I'm ready. I'm ready. Because here's the thing, right? I love Shakespeare. Love heightened language and verse. And I think there's a few stories I don't know that we need to tell anymore. But I'm really taken with the idea that like this person could write something 400 years ago and it could speak to a Black kid from Pittsburgh. That it could find a way to resonate, that it deals with the human condition in some way, shape, or form. And so I think those are the things we need to preserve and continue to interpret through our modern lens, right? Like they're not museum pieces. The great thing about theater is that it's live and it's immediate, and it's this like act of two-way communication that exists for the 2.5 hours that it's actually happening, and then it's done and it's gone, right? And it's always different, right? We know this, right? It's different because the audience is different and you're not making the same thing. So like lean into that when you're creating it, and you can say like, hey, generations of people have heard these words, but like this is today's interpretation of it. This is my Hamlet, which is different from your Hamlet, which is different from your Hamlet. That's what's so exciting about it. So I, am totally into preserving and playing with those texts that are not actively harmful. So like that's the thing. It's like, now how do we get rid of our nostalgia for like what made us feel good when we didn't know better, but now we know better and we understand that this is hateful, harmful, ugly, right? Can we repurpose that into something new? Can we put it somewhere else? Or should we put it away? I've been working. Two Gentlemen of Verona is a play that I deeply adore. It's one of the first professional productions I did. I think the ending's super problematic, and so I spent a summer a couple of years ago working with some students at a theater I was at, trying to rework the ending to like look for different ways. Because at the end of the day, I was kind of like, look, I love this play, but if I can't package this differently or tell the story in a different way, I can't tell the story. So, I think it has to be okay for us to play around with those things a little bit,
Yeah. That's interesting because I was thinking like, what do you do with those pieces that like do you put them away? That no longer serve us, or we may feel that no longer serve us? What do you do with them? Because they're still pieces of work. They're still there. How do you treat them? Yeah. So any thoughts around that, Amanda? Not to put you on the spot.
Well, It's so tough. I thought for 26 years of my life that I was going to be a classical actor, and that I was just going to do Shakespeare for the rest of my life. And that just didn't happen. So I have a deep, deep, deep love for Shakespeare. And also, whoa, is it problematic? And also, whoa, are there not a ton of opportunities for women in there? I feel like if you are gonna produce a text that is problematic, if you're gonna produce it, uh, I don't know how else to say this except just like don't pretend that it's not. You know, how can you lean into those areas that are sticky so that you make your audience see that it's sticky, make your audience see that it's gross, and ask questions about it instead of I see people waste a lot of energy trying to figure out like how to make it palatable, like I said before. And I think sometimes it's not. I think you can let it not be.
Yeah.
It's about like whether it's intrinsic to the core of the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it is at its core like anti-Semitic or deeply sexist or racist, then like I don't know how you can cut it out, you know? But
yeah,
if there are like tangential pieces of it, you know, it's like a banana, like cut off the brown spot, throw it away, like eat the other part, right?
yeah.
So, you know, but that's the key, right? Is like figuring out like what is there, you know.
Yeah.
Some things I just don't have it, like I don't know how to make Merchant of Venice work. Like I'm just not super interested in that. It just feels anti-Semitic and I don't understand. I can't figure out a way to do it. So I'm not interested in telling that story. But something like Two Gents, which I do think has this problematic strain at the end, I think there's a way that you might be able to reassign some lines or play with like the gender identity of like who's being cast in those roles initially that might be able to tell the story in a different way. So, but it's just, it has to be very intentional and you have to really kind of think your way through it and have conversations about it and don't assume that like, you know, you're coming from your particular lens. So like, you know, making sure you're getting other opinions, but yeah, it's tricky.
And I think it requires, like you were saying, it requires a lot of preparation, and it requires you to be incredibly intentional about what you're doing. And I think it requires whoever is producing that work to ask the question, why am I doing this now in this community?
Yes.
What questions is this relevant to the community in which I'm in? And how can I ask those questions intentionally rather than, well, I'm just producing this because it's a classic text. It's a classic. So people need to see it because it's a classic.
Because I want to do it.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to play Mackers. So,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
What about those classic pieces that are not problematic though? You know, but they tend to take up space and not allow for new works to enter, and it's not the fault of the text, right? It's the people in power. So what about that? Like, you know, one of the things that I struggle with is like those classic plays, particularly those that are about Black experiences, that get produced around February, you know, but
yeah.
So, but I think about like A Raisin in the Sun, a number of August Wilson plays, and they're like the go-to for when like a theater company run by someone white wants to do a play that involves predominantly Black characters or all Black characters or whatever. And so like I'm always torn between you know, this classic piece that I love, but then also feeling like, well, these aren't the only Black playwrights out there. Can we dig a little deeper? Can we, you know, and I believe that and I believe that that's something that like the August Wilsons or the Lorraine Hansberrys would want. They would want for the next generation of Black playwrights to have their opportunity the way that they did. So what do you guys think about that? What do you think about like those classic pieces that are great, but maybe overproduced?
I mean, that's the gatekeeper's fault, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it really is. I mean, I spent 9 months of my life doing Raisin in the Sun. I deeply love it. I also was lucky that I did the production with Lou Bellamy from Penumbra, who is a pillar. Like if there's a Mount Rushmore of Black theater artists in America, he should be on it. For what he's done. But he directed a really vital production where they were real people. They weren't caricatures. So that was kind of part of the deal, right? Is that people were like, oh, the youngers feel like actual people I know, not just stereotypes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's the push too for like how do we push those gatekeepers to say like there's more than Hansberry and Wilson. Like we can go beyond that. There are more folks out there right now. This is what comes back to new work, right? Like, you know, what are you trying to? This is a great story. Fences is a great story. Piano Lesson is a great story. I love them. I would love to do them. Please hire me to direct them. I will gladly do it. But also, like, what's drawing you to this play? And here's a couple other things that you know may also pull you or draw you in, right? Here's some look at
Yeah.
Alicia Harris, look at Dave Harris, like look at new people who are writing, look at more so, right? Who are the people that there are current people that are telling stories that are maybe gonna move your audience in the same way if you're looking for a certain type of something, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, it feels. I totally agree. Like I've done Fences, Piano Lesson, and A Raisin in the Sun myself. Like you said, great pieces, and that's the thing that I'm torn about sometimes. Is like I love this piece, but I wish that like you said, I wish the gatekeepers would. I wish they would think about it more. Think about other playwrights. Um, you know, it just feels sometimes it feels lazy when
That's what I
making.
was gonna say. That's
Well,
what I
it
was
is
gonna
sometimes.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think artistic directors, not like I was saying before, I think they need to make a bigger effort to be keyed into their communities. But I also think they need to be making an active effort to educate themselves about new work that is being produced all over the country, new work that is being written all over the country. I think it needs to be an active and constant pursuit of what's new, what's happening. And I think sometimes, especially if you've had that job for a long time, it's difficult to put that onus on yourself to like constantly educate yourself. But I think it's a responsibility of a person who heads up an artistic organization to do that legwork.
Change is hard, right? Change is
Yeah.
hard, but you have to engage and find new ways to engage and find new people to surround yourself with. I mean, if you look at your board and your board's all the same, same age, same race, same education, same neighborhood, same income level, like something's not right. You
Mhm.
know, you're going to tell the same type of story. You're going to attract the same type of folks. So like,
Yeah.
how can you broaden out? How can you broaden out who your board is? How can you broaden out who your staff is? How can you broaden out the people that you're bringing into the theater? That engagement. Because when you start to diversify in that sense, you're gonna find new things that are gonna check different boxes. And I think that's the thing, right? It's like if you have I'll generalize a little bit. If you have a you know, older, retired, affluent, educated white audience, right? There's an assumption that like they will only take so much risk and they will only have an
Mhm.
appetite for so much risk, and I think that, maybe that's true for some of those folks, but there are a lot of other folks who will be really hungry for new, interesting things, and you just have to give it to them, right? Just feed them. I got a 3-year-old, and he's got to eat new food sometimes, right? I just put it on the front of him, see if he's gonna eat it, and he usually
Yeah.
eats it, and he usually likes it. So I think there is a sense too of like, if you're in that position, you have to challenge your audience, and give
Yeah.
them new things that are going to push them, that are going to, there's always room for the comfort food, right? But, find ways to push and challenge them a little bit. I just don't see the point otherwise in doing this,
Yeah. And in Nashville specifically, it feels like there's a lot of catering to a specific kind of audience member, like you were saying. But Nashville is a very diverse city with a lot of very artistic people. I mean, it's Music City. It's like a hub for storytellers. So I think there is a huge market for new work in Nashville that just isn't being tapped because, like you said, the instinct is to cater to the people who have been putting money in our pockets for the past 30 years.
Yeah, and I think I'll say one more thing, which is that my wife is first generation Mexican American, and we often talk about your family does it this way, my family does it this way, and we find out that there are all these commonalities, right? We're celebrating the same holidays in different ways, and I really think that one of the ways in which I'm going to kind of, go to this place, but like one of the ways we can like put ourselves together as a country, right, is to get to know ourselves, right? To get to know people. And I think the more that you see different people and see how similar they are to you, the more you can empathize, right? And I think the stronger it makes us all. So I think there is this like, you just have to get people to see like the commonalities, and I feel like the best stories do that. Nobody can watch Pipeline, right, by Dominique Morceau, and not like understand that like the love that a mother has for their son. Like you can't not see that. I don't care what race you are, I don't care if you're children, right? You see that bond, you understand that bond. So it's finding those are the things that you want to appeal to, right? And that's how you showcase it, and that's how you advertise it, right?
Yes.
It's a mother like trying to help her son navigate the system, right? To stay out of the system, right? Those are things that people can relate to, and it doesn't just have to be about race in that sense, right? We don't have to advertise in that lane or push people in that way to play on those things, right? We can tell these broader stories that are going to pull people in, right? So some of it's marketing, right? It's just like how do we market these things,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, listen, we have about like 1 minute before we need to transition into breakout rooms. I want to know very briefly from each of you just how you feel. Like right now we're having this conversation, which I think is important. And hopefully we can, move the needle a little bit. And so what are you hopeful? How do you feel when thinking about new works and the direction we're going? Are we truly moving forward? What do you think briefly before, so we can go to the breakout rooms?
Yeah, I'm hopeful. I think we have a great opportunity that'll probably start in like October, right? To reset how we do things, and it's all out there for us. I'm optimistic that we'll choose the kind of new way forward, that we won't fall back into old habits.
Yeah. I'm also really hopeful. I think that being able to see art in this kind of like pandemic world has given audiences access to a lot of material that they were not able to access before, and has also given folks who perhaps did not have a large platform to get online and show something to a wider audience of people who may not have seen it before. And I think that's going to carry over.
Nice. Thank you. All right, so we are ready to transition into breakout rooms. Yeah, so I guess somebody's gonna zap us out of here. I think, yeah, here we go.
Oh, here we go.
All right, see you on the other side.
Right. and then we'll get on topic. But
Yeah, sure.
it's like,
I just had
so
to
let's
say it.
say, all right, are we all back?
No, we are not. I think we're waiting on one more.
Waiting for people to pop up. How were your groups? How were your breakout rooms? How were your conversations? Okay, cool, cool. All right, people are coming back now. Nettie has 9% battery. I think we might have everybody back now. I'm gonna say that we do. Oh, Amanda's there. Yeah. So I'm gonna say that we're back. We did it, Joe. Had to say that. All right. So let's do some sharing. Some takeaways from your breakout sessions. So I am going to, since I'm talking, I'm going to call my group out first, which means that I'm calling Joe out to share with the group what some of the things that we talked about.
Okay, I was just typing one last thing that I didn't get to say, so I'll probably shoehorn that in. We're talking about casting difficulties, I guess, but I think what we were really talking about that boiled down to, let me spotlight myself, I can get in there. We were talking about how that mostly boiled down to who do you want at your auditions? Who are you not seeing at your auditions? Why are they not there? Is it because they have no faith that you would ever give them a call back because you never have before? And they think there's no chance. So how do you turn that around? And we talked some about how it's the material, but how by and large, Sean talked about how it's making those responsibilities with the people that you don't see in your theater. It's about relationships, not responsibilities, different R word. Relationships. It's about going to see other people's plays that don't look like you, and the people who aren't coming to your auditions, they're doing work, and it's on you. We talked about kind of the responsibility of artistic directors, producers, board members to get out there and familiarize themselves with the talent that is available in their pool, and not just be dismayed when those people that they've never met, never talked to, and never shown an interest in outside of meeting them through Sean when they needed a black guy, why they're not showing up. And then I was also typing in, and we didn't get group consensus on this, but I think larger theater companies in town have a responsibility to cross-promote those smaller companies that we're talking about. I think it's an ethical imperative because of their spotlight and their existing audience, but I think it's a business decision to, the more people that we have that feel like they have a place in the community, the more audience we get going to different types of shows. I think it only benefits everyone in the theater community because it makes it bigger. So that was our group. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, you did it, Joe. All right. Who was like the note keeper in Amanda's group?
I was.
Okay.
But we can all chat if Kristen or Kelsey, if either of you want to share any thoughts you have about our discussion, please.
Well, it's hard to get audiences to come if you don't have money for them to hear about that you're doing a play or you're doing a new thing. That's one of the things. Amanda took better notes. But that's what I mean. And, that also goes with what Joe was saying about the other people cross promoting. That would be cool. Having help from the leadership from above in the organization. Everyone has to be fully involved and support you from the top, especially when it's a new thing that people have not seen before. Take it away, Amanda.
That was great, Kelsey. Kristen, did you want to add anything? Oh, you're muted.
Let me. Really? Okay. So one of the things that I talked about was, because part of my gig at TPAC is to start some new education programs, and it takes time, and you have to be able to, within the company, within the leadership, be okay with things taking time. And it's been my experience that to do something new, to see if it's going to actually even work or not, it takes about 3 years. And so to have the kind of commitment monetarily, as well as just, support, moral support of to say, we're going to try this for 3 entire seasons to see, like, we're going to try to plan 10 events a year for 3 seasons. So that's 30 things. And if it's going to work, that's what we're going to see, if it's going to work after 3 years, and it does take, time and money and just a lot of moral support to see if it's actually going to work. But that has been my experience. And thankfully, we've had enough success for people to see, oh yeah, it actually can work. But it just takes time, and to be able to let people know that things take time, because there's a lot of, even a lot of people, if your one thing doesn't work, they are like, oh, that didn't work, we got to try something new. And it's like, well, not necessarily. I mean, if you have a good plan and a good idea, and you have a good vision, then you need to actually try and over time and see if it's going to work or not. And so, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you, Kristen.
All right. Kyle's group. Who was the note keeper?
I was a terrible leader and forgot to assign one. But we did I copped to that at the end and we summed up. But yeah, I think Alicia or Amy or Josh should share what our kind of key takeaways were. Should I just pick one of you? I can see Amy. Someone pick Amy.
That was smooth. Yeah, I think that we had a really good, and it was, one of the main things that we kept coming back to was kind of the building the relationships, real relationships, that again take time to build, and in a real organic way, and building bridges between all these different areas. So like you have this, strong music community, you have a strong theater community, you have film, you have all these different things that maybe you're not necessarily communicating. And so how can we look at whether it's kind of sharing resources or skill sets, or trading ideas, but really building those relationships. And then one of the other things I know we were talking about was, I don't know how we got into this, but we were talking about, like, especially for new works, like I mentioned, the Theater Bug, because they're so good at building those connections with, like, a local organization. If they're talking about, like, mental health or teen suicide or whatever it is, they are actually consulting with local organizations and kind of getting them to buy into what they're doing. And that opens up to a whole new audience, people that might not necessarily come see the show otherwise. And then Kyle was talking about, like, site specific works where, it was a show about journalism, right? It was the Quantum Theater, and so I thought that was a really cool idea, and we've maybe done a little bit of that here in Nashville, but probably could do a whole lot more. Was that mostly it? I think I hit some of the highlights.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is that, we talked about, in forming real relationships, that they're about more than just money. It's about kind of like being integration. And like, you can still say yes to money, like don't ever say no, but there's a lot of other ways to kind of exchange and kind of be part of the community. So like, how do you really kind of integrate yourself in the community? And an idea I tossed out was like thinking about yourself like a big corporation, right? Big corporations are always giving back in some way, shape, or form. So like, what is the way your company can do that, right? Can you partner with the library to read to kids 20 hours a week or something like that, but finding ways to really make yourself part of the community to be essential, I think starts that exchange, right? Where people then start to see and support each other and be there for one another. So yeah, it was a great conversation.
Yeah. All right. All right. Thank all the groups. Thank you all for sharing. Snap, snap, snaps. So now in the time that we have left, we want to open the floor to anyone who might have questions for the panelists. Taking questions. We're taking questions. Good ones. I know you got some good. I know Amy has good questions because
we'll take bad ones too. That's fine.
Amy's got good questions. Now, any questions that you have, we'll take. I can't see everybody, so you'll have to just unmute yourself and say something. And don't do this to me, y'all. Don't leave me just sitting here having to ad lib. I know I'm an actor and all, but
I have a question. I have a question. It's Beth Ann.
Okay.
I have a question for Amanda. Hi, Amanda Card. Nice to see your face. Hey, so I have a question. I love devised theater. I love the idea of devised theater. I loved hearing you talk about devised theater, but I was very curious because you were talking about doing that in as authentically a democratic way as possible, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a democracy, does it?
No, absolutely
and so
not.
you could do it like we were talking about the time frame of rehearsal periods and the need to sometimes keep things on time. Wouldn't you sometimes get to where you need to be by being specific and guided and not necessarily democratic?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I also think that something that's actually really helpful to the devising process is to create boxes.
Yeah.
That you can work inside of. Because if you go into a space and you're like, we're going to make a show and we have an unlimited amount of time and we can say whatever we want, then it's like, but it has to be important. Then it's like, but if you're like, all right, here's a prompt, work on it for 30 minutes,
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be democratic. I am always, my dream is to one day be in a devising process that is democratic. I haven't found it yet, but I'm hopeful.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. We're still taking them, so you can put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Let's see here. I see something pop up in the chat. Joe has asked, what role does criticism play in new works or cultivating a community that values new works? What can criticism do to call attention to old works taking up space? That sounds like a Kyle question to me. Putting Kyle on the spot.
No, that's good. Well, I think the question is, what is the purpose of the criticism, right? So, ANPF is comprised of a lot of volunteer folks in the community. Some people who have had theater as their vocation, some as their avocation, right? Who just like doing it or just want something to do. And, there are a lot of people there who are really invested when giving feedback to playwrights or talking about the plays, really invested in like making it better or trying to figure out why it didn't work. And then there are some people who just want to hear themselves talk. And there are a few people who just want to shoot things down, right? So I think, you have to kind of figure out what is the shape and guidance to make that criticism helpful, right? And the goal of criticism is to strengthen the work, I think, right? Or to highlight things, to ask questions so that it becomes something that has a story, that says something that's enjoyable, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, it's making sure you're curating that criticism, right? To kind of guide it in the right way and to make sure that it's generous and not mean-spirited, you know? And I think it's the same when kind of pointing out flaws in works, you know? It's easy to be like, to tear things down, right? But how can you point something out in order to get to something that's going to be more helpful or more useful? So I think so much of it is just about it's about the intent, right? You know, you have to be clear about like what your intent is when you're talking about these things, right? In order to make sure that the impact is what you want it to be.
All right. All right. Thank you for that answer. All right. I was just about to ask somebody for a question, and we have one in the chat. How can the Nashville theater/arts community address the many, many newcomers to Nashville from larger markets? Are we providing content that speaks to their needs and will grab them and keep them engaged in their new community? That's a great question. A great couple of questions.
Maybe you should answer
an
that.
answer for that.
You should answer that, Sean. How do you answer that question? What do you think?
So let me be serious here. You know, I think, well, one of the things is we're sitting here talking about new works, right? So I think, I can't remember who mentioned this, maybe this was Kyle, but, you know, people coming from maybe larger cities who have had access to who've seen works that are edgy, new, whatever, not just the classic or traditional things, might be missing that from whatever city they came from. And, you know, I think there's a opportunity for us to appeal to them, because those people might not want to go see, name something. Yeah, they might not want to go see something that they've seen a million times or have had an opportunity to see a million times. So that's one thing. Yeah, I don't know if I think there's some content out there that will grab them. I just don't think, I think there needs to be more of it. Yeah, that's my struggle answer, but I'm sticking with it. I made it through it. What avenues are there for new works or new plays outside of self-producing? If you are outside of academia, are plays best submitted to new works festivals or done DIY? And what other ways do you see? If you write, can you best serve your play by also producing?
Well, one great way to get your new play seen is to submit it to the Ashland New Plays Festival at ashlandnewplays.org.
Hey.
Every year we're taking plays from anyone, right? We open submissions in mid-June, big competition, everybody reads them and goes through. I think the only thing I'll say about self-producing is that it's so hard to buy the groceries and cook the meal and serve the meal and do the dishes all at the same time, and I think the art of collaboration is critical to theater. And I think that there can be some nice kind of checks or assets by working with other people. And I think real talk, it just looks better if there are more people involved in it, as opposed to kind of you doing the whole thing yourself. Not that it doesn't work, but I would say like finding those partnerships and working together with people in order to partner. Academia is always the safer, easier option. Like there's just more money inherently there, I think. But there's a lot of new play festivals around. I mean, these links are all really great. And even around the country, there's a lot of places where you can submit your plays, to get them seen and heard by folks, to kind of take workshops together and learn from people. So I think it's like finding those kind of communities and finding places that'll encourage and uplift you is key.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because there's so many. I know I've entered a lot of festivals throughout the years, and even if it's, I've had opportunities to produce works to just perform at a festival, but also have just like a script read by actors there. So there's a lot of great opportunities just all over the country, all over the world to have your stuff heard. I self-produce because I'm a self-producer. But no, I self-produce because I just want to take control of. I don't want my script sitting around. Like I poured my heart and soul into it. So I kind of take both avenues. Like I've had my work produced by other people, but I also will step up and produce myself, my stuff myself. So I think it's really about, I think what Kyle said too is something that I'm learning more too, just having, because even when I'm self-producing, I'm still collaborating. I mean, there's still actors there, there's still crew people there, there's still like a stage manager, assistant director or whatever. So there's still collaboration, but I'm learning, because at first, to be quite honest, to be quite transparent here, I used to have a little bit of issue with letting go of my work. And then the great Barry Scott, God rest his soul, he talked to me about that. And he was just like, no, you gotta, he wanted to produce something that I had written. And he really like got me out of being so protective, because I had this vision and I didn't want anybody mess up my work or whatever. So yeah, I'm looking forward to more collaboration as far as a playwright myself. So
I also just wanted to add, if you have a script that you want done, you can upload it onto, you all probably already know about this, New Play Exchange, and just tag the heck out of it. Like how many characters are in it, the gender of the characters, the topics it discusses, because there are theaters and new play festivals that are constantly just searching those tags on New Play Exchange, like searching for plays that have a cast of 3 women, searching for plays that are about this topic. And New Play Exchange they'll send you an email like, your play might be right for this opportunity that's looking for this list of things. So that's another great resource.
And there's so many, thirsty theater people out there that, I just think about my students who are always like looking for stuff to do, always looking for scenes. And, we send them to New Play Exchange. They find things, they want to produce them, they want to put them on, right? They take it to their hometown fringe festival or put it on at school or something like that. So I think that's a great way to get your work out there, get people to see it. And, you never know who's going to be interested in it and where it might go from there.
Yeah, I had a great experience. I've never used a New Play Exchange, but I think I'm going to look into it. I had an experience where one of my scripts got into the hands of a few professors, and so then like every year I would get requests from students who wanted to use it in competitions, and they wanted monologues or scenes, and so yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, we're in the middle of auditions right now for Carnegie. So we're seeing, I think we had 2,000 kids audition. We're seeing 800 live. And, if I hear An Ideal Husband or Midsummer another time, where Prodigal Son, like I'm going to bang my head off the wall. But always like, anytime we're doing audition workshops, we're like, New Play Exchange, look for the new plays, look for those monologues. If I hear something interesting, I'm always asking, oh, who's that playwright? What's that from? Oh, I really like that, I'll look them up. I'm buying scripts or whatever. So yeah.
It's a great way to connect with playwrights you admire too, because if they have their work up there, you can write a recommendation that is displayed on their page with your name underneath it that says like, you should produce this play because it's blah, 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 blah. So it's a great way for you to like get in touch with playwrights you admire as well.
Nice.
And I think this is also connected to the problem, the solution, the potential solution that came up in all 3 of the groups, which is that a majority of the work that needs to be done is building authentic relationships, not just transactional ones.
Yes.
And if you see that there is an underrepresented group in our community, right? Whether, or even specific actors or specific directors or specific designers that you see consistently are not getting opportunities, or you've worked with them but don't understand why they never get jobs, right? Say, I'm going to make something with you, right? Let's take this to a small company and let's do it, right? there are a lot of young sort of up and coming producers, right, in their 20s and 30s in Nashville, who are looking for projects with really passionate people behind them to produce and to help with, right? So it also has, I think that is an opportunity for relationship building and for crossing some of those boundaries that are, seem pretty insurmountable in Nashville sometimes, but really aren't, right? Like if you saw someone in a play and you're like, wow, I love this actor, I would love to put them in something, just do it. Like literally, even if it's just a reading over Zoom, what harm is there?
Yeah. Any more questions? I know there's like one more question. One more question in there.
Where are these producers? I mean, honestly,
kindling.
If you look at the staff and boards and crews of shows at a lot of the bigger theaters, you will find a lot of younger folks out there looking for opportunities, right? Like I personally am like this, I'm producing this because I wanted to produce this, right? And so I asked Nettie if I could, and she said yes. And there are, I'm not the only one out there, right? Like there are a lot of folks, and Josh, you and I can talk about this later because there really are folks out there who are looking for things to do, especially right now. So I would say, even if you don't know that someone is a producer, or you don't know someone's a director, or you don't know if someone is interested in your work, just ask them. Because more than likely, in Nashville right now, people are going to say, sure, yeah, I would love to do something, anything. You know what I mean?
People might not know they're producers until you tell them,
Correct.
I mean, the first time I produced something, I was like, oh, it felt really intimidating. And then I was like, oh, no, I know how to do this. Oh, yeah, I can totally do this. So, I think part of it too is are the people that are passionate about the work, and, what's the way that they can contribute? They can contribute by putting a budget together. They can make connections to you. They can help you bring in other people. So you got to figure that out.
Yeah. Well, if there are no more questions, let's get some final words from our panel. Some final thoughts, shall we? Or you all thought it out?
Final thought.
So broad. This is like devising without the box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Freedom.
It's hard.
What, do you all need a question?
I prompt. It's just a prompt of something.
Please. Yes.
Okay. So let's in as we part ways here, let's share what you're going to do as an individual to help us continue to push forward on this path of creating and supporting new works. And if that's not good enough, then you can come up with your own question and answer. Y'all were looking at me like, that's the question.
Well,
or give a charge to the people watching.
Well, I could take two things. There are two things that I'm thinking of immediately. So the first thing is that, I think my job, even though I'm not an artistic director anymore, that I'm, a freelance artist, and I'm, teaching and on the leadership team at CMU. I think my job is to still uplift and support the next generation of artists. And so I want to continue to find ways to do that. So, if it's by making connections, between playwrights and theaters, or promoting work, sending them to my people, or just helping readers. But there's always a way that I can help people make their work better. So if it's just taking time to answer an email or be in a reading or something like that, I think that I can do that. I think my charge, I do have charge, I think. And I want you to remember this charge in like 6 months or a year, when it's time to go back to stuff, right? When we can safely go back to things. And I think it's, how can you get that person in your life that doesn't consider theater as an option to go to theater, right? I think the biggest challenge is, when I was under 35, I am no longer under 35, but when I'm under 35, I would say, how do we get us to go to the theater on a regular basis? How do we get us to think of it as an entertainment option? And I think that is still the big question. And I think that there is such an opportunity coming up for us when we are able to be in places together again, to introduce people. So how can we all commit to exposing people to the wonder of live theater, of that kind of alchemy? How are we going to do that? And I think that's the charge, is who can you bring? Think about it now, line up your targets, save your pennies for those tickets, and figure out how you're going to get those people in the theater with you. That's my charge.
I love that. Amanda.
Oh, mine's not going to sound as smart as that. I'm sure it's not. I just want to say, see a lot of art. And also I want to say, if you're the kind of person who has personal relationships with people who are in leadership positions in the arts community in Nashville, if your social media reach is large, ask people why they're not supporting these projects. Tell people, I saw this play by this person and I didn't see you there and you need to go. Or this is what's next. Why have I never seen you at this theater? Or why have I never seen you cast this person? I think if you have a voice that people up there listen to, call them out and challenge them. It doesn't have to be mean, but tell people, go see this play, it's really good. Or tell people, why aren't you programming these things on your season? I think our community really wants to see them.
I love that.
For me, I think it's, I want to, and I've done a little bit of this, but I'm going to give this a stronger push. I want to see a lot of the actors that I work with on a regular basis. I wanted to empower them to tell their stories. I've been able to give people opportunities to act and to get on stage, but I really want to encourage people to write, because I think the more people we have out there doing that, the better. And sometimes people think that they don't see themselves as writers, but writing is something that can be developed. So would really love to see some of the actors that I work with on a regular basis write just a short play, or whatever it is, even if it's not a script, if it's just a short story or something of that nature, but really trying to encourage them to write, to see what comes out, to see what, if we can spark some interest and diversify the playwrights, our playwright pool here in Nashville. So I think that is it. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed what we've done today. I hope you've enjoyed the discussions and being a part of it. And I hope that we can all walk away with something that we can use to make this world better through theater. And I'm going to pass it on to Tessa. Am I passing it on to you?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I just have very quick notes, because I am devoted to keeping this an event that runs on time. I want to set that intention. Thank you guys so much for joining. Honestly, this series in a lot of ways is very selfish because I just feel really excited and joyful to like get to listen to these folks and learn. If you enjoyed this, there are a few ways to stay engaged. First of all, please do send us a comment or a question or an encouragement or whatever in our comment box if you have a suggestion for maybe how we could improve it, or you have a question or a comment about the format, please send it our way. I read those and I take them to heart and I do follow up on them. Second, plug into places in the local community that are creating and supporting new works, right? It's not just about doing new works that are, you know, being produced or created other places in the country. Like, we have a ton of opportunities in Nashville for creating new works. So if you're an actor who wants to do some new work, or you're a writer that wants to try out 5 new pages or something, please see those links in the chat there, and they are available. Lastly, I would say give to places that you believe in. If that is Verge, then we are so thankful for that. But we feel really strongly about financially and communally supporting local art and local art makers. So if there's a place that's doing the kind of work you want to see, give of your time or your resources or whatever you can to help make that work. Our next event is March 15th, and it's titled Accessibility Beyond COVID-19. We're going to be talking about the opportunities that we have for growth in Nashville in terms of practical and financial accessibility. The great thing about this conversation is that it is the jumping off point for all of the rest of our conversations this year. All of our conversations are going to involve like accessibility and relationship building, and how do we make opportunities and restructure our environment to better serve our artists and audiences. So, you know, please join us again for the rest of our season. And follow us on Facebook for all that information. We will continue to announce our panelists and all that. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, y'all. Bye-bye.